Miss Marvel was a really good show coming from the MCU, and overall, I just think it needed a lot more to give a complete story that could have made this one of the best things that Marvel has ever produced. So, of course, everybody here who's watching this review knows that this is the newest show coming from Marvel Studios in the MCU following the character of Kamala Khan, or Miss Marvel as she is known in the comics. Right now, we are going to give my thoughts and review the show overall for the 6 episodes that we did get for this season. No spoilers, of course, as it did just finish up, and I want to give people a time to watch it and come back to this review. And real quickly, before we get underway, as always, moving forward, I'm going to put this disclaimer out for every review that I do, but to be clear, this is a show that does not have any political ties to it or any politics of any nature in it. Just wanted to make that clear, since it is a thing nowadays to where everybody thinks everything is political that comes out from entertainment. While there are a lot of heavy tones of religion in the show, I do not think that that's a bad thing at all, and while there are some people, I'm sure, who are very religious that probably do have a problem with how the show portrays the religion, I am not going to be discussing any of that. I am simply here to just review the show. So getting into the review, what did I think overall of Miss Marvel? Personally, I think it was a decent, good show. I think what this show strives on so much more than most shows do is the idea around family values and life lessons, especially for young kids like Kamala Khan, or just growing in the world and just being a kid. I think more than anything, that's the best part about this show, is that all this stuff to do with the family and Kamala, and just the idea of how much love, respect, and humility is present throughout, it just glows, and it puts a smile on your face. This very much plays into some great character development as well. I think almost every character gets enough to know what they are like without having to focus too much on them, since this is Kamala's show. And speaking of Kamala herself, I think Iman Vellani plays the character to such a great extent, especially for her first ever role. She is oozing with charisma and just the ability to always crack a smile and be a happy person. So automatically there, the way you make this character act, she is immediately likable and you want to follow her journey. The same goes for her friends and her family, which are all played very well by the number of actors there are who also exhibit some of the same personality traits. For me personally, this whole entire cast was all completely new to me, and I had no recollection of any of these people in any other projects, and so seeing them all here for the first time actually gave me a heightened sense of wanting to see them in more things in the future. Of course, talking about the plot of the show itself, the story revolves around Kamala as a superhero fan with an imagination, particularly for the inspiration to want to be like her favorite superhero, who is Captain Marvel. She doesn't feel like she fits in a lot at school and sometimes even at home with her family, and until she gets her superpowers, that's when things in her life start to really look up for her. And of course, tying in her family lineage also plays a big role in just how her powers come to be and how she tends to understand everything about what is going on and where she came from. Regarding the change in her powers that they made for the show, as far as making it cosmic and less like the super stretchy of Mr. Fantastic, I didn't mind it personally, and in a way it actually gives her something more other than just being similar to Mr. Fantastic, who we will eventually see in the future for the Fantastic Four movie. And I have a feeling if those two characters ever cross paths, I do think that there's going to be a joke that is made about it that is very much in the style of the Marvel humor that we get normally in every project from Marvel. Another thing that I like about the show is its ability to branch off and do something very different than what is normally done in a lot of shows and comic book properties, which is the idea around creating a world and editing it around how a comic book might be and look. Simple stylistic choices like when she is texting somebody and the text from her phone is created through the world itself instead of just plainly looking at her phone and seeing what she says. I also just love the fact that this is one of the more colorized shows with so many different vibrant types of colors that are bright and rich and really good to look at, instead of like damp and grayer colors with shades that could leave some just being depressed watching him. And to some extent, there are a bunch of visuals and moments of CGI in the show that definitely don't work and can look out of place at times, but not every moment of visual effects was bad. And also, while we are on the topic of technical stuff with filmmaking, while I appreciate those editing choices of stylization that they use, I do think that there are some moments of editing that were very much out of place, especially the very last scene in episode 5 with Bruno and Kamran, where it just abruptly ends out of nowhere and we cut to credits. Regarding Regarding some of the characters in the show, there are definitely a few who very much get put on screen but would get absolutely nothing to them after that. And that right there to me is the biggest flaw of the entire show, which is no fault, I feel, to the characters and the story of it. And this is more particularly, I think, with the villains. It is simply just way too short and needed to be extended out at least another episode or two longer. I'll say this right now, but I am firmly on the boat of saying that the 6-episode model needs to go at this point, limited series or not. It just simply does not work and hasn't really worked for any show that has tried it. Moon Knight, Obi-Wan, and now here with Ms. Marvel, these 3 shows could have benefited so much more had they been either an episode or 2 longer. And I actually really liked Moon Knight, but it felt like the finale just wasn't all there from a story perspective and could have used 1 more episode. Here with Ms. Marvel, I very much think it needs at least 2 more, and we just didn't get that. I also think that the villains in the show are some of the more generic superhero villains that we've ever seen. Not to say that they are absolutely terrible, but they are very generic and feel like ones that you would just see out of a kid-related comic book property, whether that be the Red Daggers or the damage control people who are kind of like another division like the FBI and CIA. One thing I do think the show excelled on was the action. I didn't mind it. I really didn't. I think there were actually a bunch of scenes throughout the entire show where the action was shot in a good way to where you could tell what was going on in one-shot takes and in wides, and you could also tell that there was some decent stunt work on display as well. Of course, due to the 6-episode format, there are unfortunately some story threads that do get rushed through a little bit by the time we get to the finale, a finale of which I actually thought was pretty decent and I thought was just going to be very, very rushed. But it does tie some things up that we needed to know, but at the same time, it also doesn't tie a few things up that I was hoping we would get time, and it was just very much needed. Time of which would have been more necessary if it had 1 more episode at the least. I will also say, because I have seen a few people comment on it, I'm not really here to understand why Disney decided to release both this and the Obi-Wan show at the exact same time. That just seems like a very strange business decision to make, considering one show seemingly has a lot of people behind it and the other seemingly was very much split down the line. But having both on at the same time just juggles up a lot for people to watch, which in my eyes is just not a good way of going about it. And you very much confuse the two with what people would want to talk about. You're either talking about Obi-Wan or you're talking about Ms. Marvel, and I just feel like it was just not the smart move to release both at the exact same time, especially on the exact same day. Final thing I want to touch on about is, of course, there being a post-credit scene in the finale, so don't go away from the credits once you're done watching. Without giving anything away, I think the post-credit scene was just okay, and it wasn't this grandiose thing that I needed to get super excited about, but it does get us looking forward to a particular project that will be coming down the line in the future with the new The Marvels movie, which is essentially kind of like a sequel to the Captain Marvel movie that we got back in 2019. I didn't despise that movie like so many people did, and I think kind of overly despised. I'm not gonna lie, I still feel like that movie got too much hate. And I think this is just going to leave me intrigued as far as what we will eventually see in this movie. So by the time that film releases, I will be looking forward to seeing what happens, especially since Kamala Khan is going to be in that movie. And also, too, I should also point this out because this was shown in the very end of the episode. Again, no spoilers, but there is a pretty big scene that happens with regards to a moment of foreshadowing that is going to eventually lead us down the path of looking forward to some pretty big things in the future for the MCU. So, yeah, again, no spoilers, but it's some pretty big stuff. But those are my thoughts on the new Ms. Marvel show coming from the MCU and Disney+. In the end, I thought it was a show that I didn't think I was going to get into. It was very much a show for young girls and kids to watch, and so I think it might resonate with them a lot more. But ladies and gentlemen, now is the time you comment down below and let me know your thoughts. If you liked it or disliked it, that's totally okay as long as you communicate your thoughts in a concise and respectful manner. Also, be sure to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you are new and want to see more. I would greatly appreciate that. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next review.